All right, class, what we're going to do is kind of look at the diagramming for First John chapter 1, verses 2 and 5. What you see I've got here pulled up on the screen already is I've got the New International Version of First John 1, listing those 5 verses there. I've also got the SBL Greek New Testament, and I've got highlighted 2 through 5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy from the Greek side verse 2 and verse 5. I'm going to copy those highlighted and drop them into a Word document. I'm going to show you how to manipulate those for the diagram while I walk through the process of the diagramming as well. So again, 1 John chapter 1, 2 through 5. Now just to make sure you understand how we got here, I went in and pulled this verse up, and again you'll see these little down arrows by the version. You can kind of filter through and choose any versions you want. I can scroll down. There's the Koine version. That's what I did. So when I told when I told Bible Gateway here, I hit that add parallel, and it automatically brings up the Greek, since that's normally the first one I'll look at. If I want to add another one, I can do that, and it will pull up another version. I can have 3 side by side. In this case, the default is the King James, and it pulls that up for me. Since I'm not interested in that, I'll close it out. And what I do want to do is I'm going to take verse 2, 3, 4, and 5. I will copy them, and what I've already done, I'll show you, is I've copied them, cut them, and dropped them into a Word document. So I'm doing that now, and let me show you the Word document where I am currently working. So here we are. I've got highlighted here the 1 John chapter 1, verse 2 and verse 5. All right, so as we look at these, we'll pull this up. I've highlighted all of our verb forms here in verse 2. Phanerothe, Orakamen, Marturumen, and Epangelomen. All of these are what I would call regular verbs. They're not participles, they're not subjunctives. In this particular case, we're all looking at indicative verbs, all connected by kai. I do not see anything in the front of the verse here that tells me that there's a dependent clause happening here. So that makes me think that we've got an independent clause to start with, and then a kai, all of these kais, connecting independent clauses following. Looks like I have a dative case humin here. That's probably acting as an indirect object. We have a tain zoane, that's accusative. Again, that's a direct object. We've got tain ionion, that is an adjective modifying zoane. And then we have this atis. Now this is probably functioning as a indefinite relative pronoun. If I know it's a pronoun, it might give me pause for a minute. Maybe this is a sign of a dependent clause. The hatis does make me feel like it is indefinite. That gives me perhaps an idea that we might be talking about whoever or whatever. That sounds like it might be a relative clause. So I'm going to highlight the hatis. That is a sign to me, and I'll put the blue up here, that is a sign to me that this could be a relative clause. We've got a preposition there. That's modifying perhaps a verb here. We've got the kai. Now this is connecting ephanerothe to one of these other verbs, either one of these main verbs up above, or maybe it's connecting it to our dependent clause here. Maybe ephanerothe is governed by that. I will need to determine that in my translation. But what I'm looking at here then is I want to make sure that all of my independent clauses remain towards the left of the diagramming space. And then my dependent clauses are going to be related to the verb that they modify. The verb that they modify. So let me begin to pull this over. Now, one of the rules in our book that every conjunction we see that's connecting two words or phrases, we want to indent it about 5 spaces so that it gives us a clear structural identity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take kai, hezoe, this first phrase here, all right? And I'm going to set it right here. I'm going to put kai on its own line. It's a conjunction, and I want it to be indented by 5. And while I'm at it, I'm going to get rid of the extra space in between. I'm going to remove space before a paragraph. I'm going to remove space after paragraph. This makes it a little neater, keep it together. So Kai is going to be indented 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I come to the subject and the main verb. This life has been made known or revealed. All right, so the life has been revealed. All right, then I have the next phrase here, Kai ero kamen. Now again, since Kai is going to be, I'm going to indent it 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That shows me the structure. And then I'm going to simply place behold underneath it. This life has been revealed, and we have beheld it, and we testify about it. All right, so we have testified. So I'm going to cut and paste this again. I'm going to move the Kai in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, and I'm going to put the main verb down here on its own line. So again, you can see that we've got this kind of structure beginning to show up. All of these main verbs indicate primary actions that were taken by the author. Now, I know you see this in the English, but for an organized or maybe Western mindset, we like to see the structure of this begin to unfold. So again, I've got another Kai. To me, this Kai is again connecting these verbs together. So I'm going to indent that Kai 5 as well, and I'm going to put the next verb down there. So we have the life has been seen or revealed. We have seen it, we testify, and we proclaim. All right, so all these verbs go together. They indicate the 4 primary actions that were done. Look at what we've done. We've already created a possible 4 verb or 4 idea, 4 action outline for a sermon or a Bible study that describes what the apostles did when they saw what Jesus had done and they received the command to go. Now we've got this phrase here, and we're just going to walk through this phrase right quick. Notice the dative and accusative. It all seems to flow with this verb, and we testify or proclaim to you. Now notice we proclaim to you the life, the eternal. Now we want to make sure that we kind of put these terms in the way that they modify it. Now, human is a noun, it is a dative, but notice what it's doing. It is explaining to whom we're doing this. And since it's showing a direction or a placement, I'm going to move it down to the line underneath. I symbolize the fact that I've moved it. I'm simply putting dots here, 2, 3, to show that I know there's a word missing there. And human, I'm going to indent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right about the middle of the word. They're about 7 or 8. And there's some fun little things here in Word that you can kind of use. If you go to insert, you can come to symbols over here. And you'll notice I've got some of these symbols already laid out. So I can use this little left arrow to show how human is directly relating to apangelomen, showing to whom or to what we are proclaiming. And if I want to show also that I've moved that word and it goes in the dots, listen, I could use what we call a carré, that little upward house-looking arrow roof thing indicates that that's not in the right spot. It goes where the ellipses are. All right, so notice then we have here a direct object. A lot of times we can simply put in this symbol, we can put in an arrow to indicate where the action is going. We testify, have spoken, we've called out the life. That's what we are saying, and we are saying it in the direction of you. So we put the dative case underneath it. The 3 ellipses show that human has been moved, and then the arrow shows the direct object. The life is what we're proclaiming. Now, tein aionion is eternal. That's adverbial, or I'm sorry, adjectival. It's describing zoane, and I'm going to just drop that down on this line, and I'm going to move it down again with the space bar. And it is modifying zoane, and I'm simply going to, again, put this little angle mark in here to show that it's going down from zoane into tein aionion. Now, you could also do this with the articles, but I'm not going to go into that much depth here. But if you wanted to do that, you could. But notice now this first part of this verse, the life which has been revealed, which we have seen, we testify, and we are now proclaiming to you, human, the life. We're proclaiming the life eternal to you. And that leads us to this next phrase, hetis hein, proston patera, kai, ephanerothe, amen. All right, so as we kind of look at these terms and perceive how we want to, or think through how we want to go about it, we see that which was with the Father and has appeared to us. That's kind of the English translation we've got going here. And so the fact that we would translate this which speaks to relative pronoun. So that makes it a dependent clause. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to highlight these independent. All right, so all of these verbs here are independent. I can copy them and list it here. And again, we can put the phrase back over here, but each of these clauses is independent. But now I've got a relative pronoun working here, and I am going to call this a dependent clause. And it is actually describing, as a relative pronoun word, describing the life, right? So which term should it go under? Well, it should go under Zoe. So that's how I'm going to manage this. I'm going to pull this. I'm going to drop it down on this line right here. And I'm going to begin my indentation process. I can use tabs if I want. And I'll get rid of the blue there in a minute. But what we can do is we see that eternal life modifies Zoane. And I can also come down with another arrow here. And just for simplicity's sake, I'll go ahead and put the mark here. But what I can do, just show you, is I can give myself a little room here. And I can even draw a line. I can insert a line. And with that line, I can, like shapes. If I go to shapes, I can tell it to draw a line right there. And I want it to draw a line from Zoane down here to my angle. So that's what I'll do. I can make it a nice black line so that's easy to see, matches what I've got, and boom, now I've got an angle from Zoane down to a tis. So the life, it is eternal, but it's life also which was, and this was before the Father, or with the Father, if you will. I mean, pros means before as in his presence. So literally, which was in the presence of the Father. That's what pros really designates. And so I'm going to go ahead and, again, I'm going to put that underneath as a modifier for was. And again, I can use my little angle here to drop that in. Now, what is Kai connecting? Which was with the Father and testifies to us. All right. Notice the Kai then is connecting these two verbs under a tis. So my Kai is going to need to be indented. There we go. Let's make it up here. And the Chi is going to be indented by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually, it needs to be under ain. And then I'm going to put the next verb here. And I'll line those verbs up so you can see ain, Chi, ephanerothe. They go together under hetis. And then hemen, again, we can do the same thing we did before. I can simply put it under, and I can insert that symbol. And now I've got a diagram of verse 2, in which case I can see where the independent verbs connect, but I can also see where these dependent verbs connect as well. All right. So as you're looking at your diagram, I'm hoping that you noticed how these main verbs connected together and that they were independent clauses. And I hope you also noticed that these other two verb forms were dependent, followed by this relative pronoun. Now, you can simplify this by putting humen, tain, zoane, tain, ionion. You could put all that on the same line. I'm not going to be frustrated or offended by that. But you can see here, I've been able to break down all these parts and show where they modify. And that's what the full diagram was looking like. But if you'll pause just a minute, let me show you a simplified version of this, okay? What we'll do is we'll get rid of all these extra. And I'll just put, I'm going to leave the Kais where they are. We want the Kais to show the, we want them to show the, we want the Kais to show the structure for us. But I am going to put these other terms back kind of in their regular order so that you can see maybe a more simplified version of this. All right, get rid of these ellipses. All right. down that little, we don't need that extra line there. I'll get rid of it. All right. I'll get rid of that blue if it's kind of annoying there. So, all right, so notice I kind of cleaned things up, put them all in the same lines, but I still want to identify the independent phrases and the dependent phrases as well. And hopefully your verse 2 diagram looks something like that. I just wanted to walk through that and explain it. And let me go through verse 5 as well. Again, I want to identify the verbs. I know esten is a verb. I know that akeka amen is also a verb. I know anagel lamen is also a verb. I know esten here is a verb. We'll get rid of this little footnote there. And I know that this esten also is a verb. But I also saw a couple other things here that we need to highlight. Ein is definitely a relative pronoun. That often leads to a dependent clause. Notice again, hateh, by definition, also leads to dependent clauses. So notice that as we're setting this up, we've got a couple of dependent clauses that we want to recognize. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to show you how I'm going to break this particular verse down. I'm going to make a full copy of it here. And I see kai esten alte he angelia. All right, that's its own sentence, and this is the message. All right, and that is very much a independent clause. All right, so we'll just put independent there like we've done on the others. But notice we have a relative pronoun here, which we have heard from him. That's a full thought, but the which indicates it's dependent. So I'm just going to go ahead and note that. Definitely dependent. Notice here we've got a kai, so that's going to indent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for now. And which we have heard and which we proclaim to you. Okay, so since these verbs both relate back to the relative pronoun, I'm going to keep them in the same basic structure. Notice hateh again is a new relative pronoun, that God is light, all right? And kai indicates a new idea, so God is light. And we're going to identify the kai, right? Here's the connector. And then darkness in him not is ever or never. So double negative, really strong and forcefully put. So both of those phrases go with the hateh. So I've found all my particular clauses here. An independent clause, this is the message. Dependent, which we have heard. Dependent, which we proclaim. Hateh, again, introduces a dependent. God is light. And then kai, this one connects two equal parts, and they're both dependent. And that there's no darkness in him. So again, notice the question is these relative pronouns and this hateh, which is result, what verb are they modifying? And I believe both of them go back to the idea of is. All right, this is the message which. So it's actually not is, I'm sorry. It's describing message, and that's what the relative pronoun does. It is modifying a noun. So we're going to line that up. Then we want the kai to be 5 steps within that. So right here, 5 steps within that K comment, and then we're going to show the parallel verb underneath it right here. We'll line that up better. All right, so there's the K comment. Notice that which we have heard and which we have sent, and then we've got the second one, hateh, again. This one is describing hateh because this is cause. So which we have heard from him and which we proclaim to you, and this is the content of what we proclaim. So the content of hateh is dependent on how we're proclaiming it, anangelamon. So we're going to relate that particular statement under anangelamon, that God is light, and then we're going to use our indentation here again. God is light, and darkness is not in him. We'll just line them up like this, trying to get them basically the same place here. So what I've been able to do here is line up these two relative clauses in term, or not relative clauses, these two dependent clauses in terms of where they are connecting. So the message which and the two verbs that follow modify angelia, but notice hatir, that is cause, which we proclaim that, actually, I'm sorry, I keep saying cause, it's content of what we proclaim. We have heard and we proclaim that God is light and in him is no darkness at all, or never is no darkness in him. So we've got it listed here, and hatir is relating back to the content of what we proclaim. This is kind of an indirect quote, and I note in the textbook that some of the pages I showed you on diagramming that you can create kind of a quote here by using hatir and putting a line beside here. And that just kind of indicates that it's all one quote, and that can look something like this. If we were just to go up to Smart Art, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. If we were just to go to the shapes, and again, select a line, we could drop the line here just to kind of show that everything here all belongs in one particular quote. This is particularly useful when we see a quote go over several lines. We can make sure the color is black, and that way we can just kind of see everything together right there. All right. And if you wanted to, you can grab, if it looks crooked to you, which it does to me, you can just straighten it out a little bit, and boom, there you go. So notice here that we've diagrammed verse 2, and I've laid it out in verse 5, and I've laid it out in independent and dependent clauses, and I'll walk through the process of recognizing those and to put them here. And so kind of reflect on this, and again, if you have questions, let me know via email. But that's kind of a way that these first two can run. Again, look for independent and dependent clauses. If you can recognize those and lay those out, you've done the right thing. Don't worry about all the major details. However, if you do, I'll be glad to look at those as well.